This morning's Old Testament reading is from Genesis. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. And from the New Testament in Matthew, when Jesus heard what had happened, the death of John the Baptist, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides the women and children.
I didn't notice that when I read that a little while ago, that they counted the men. 5,000 men. Oh, besides the women and children. That's okay. Maybe they got out of some of the work. Anybody's hip hurting?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I didn't know that was a visit from God, but I'm taking that. More than 40 million Americans sometimes go hungry. According to the Society of St. Andrew newsletter, including women, children, the unemployed, the working poor, seniors, and those who are homeless, 1 in 8 Americans experience food insecurity every year, including 1 in 6 children. Food insecure people, that's a weird term, but either do not have enough to eat or they do not know where their next meal will come from. It's not a certainty. Causes of food insecurity, you could name these 2, but it's a helpful little list. Poverty, unemployment, underemployment, chronic health conditions, the high cost of health care, natural disasters, high housing costs, and systemic racism or discrimination. Food insecurity leads to long-term physical and mental illness. Children are particularly affected as inadequate nutrition leads to educational issues and health conditions. So back to church. When Jesus blessed the 5 loaves and 2 fish and fed the crowd on that long ago day, a miracle happened. A large group of people, strangers to each other, now became a community, believing that all the people could be and would be fed. Just hang on to these lines a little bit, okay? A miracle happened. The miracle was the experience of the mysterious but unmistakable power of love, manifest in the Christ, to make the impossible possible for humanity. This message of this story seems rather straightforward, doesn't it? But how does it fit with our passage from Genesis read this morning, Jacob wrestling with the angel? Notice how it goes from he's wrestling with a man, and then how he understands that to be, and he hears that this is a God moment. You're wrestling with something bigger. The story of Jacob sending his family away in order to be alone and then wrestling with an angel long into the night is a curious one, but compelling and powerful in its imagery. Remember what happened in the story when they were young? Jacob had previously stolen his brother Esau's birthright, because his brother is who deserved it, but he had stolen it, tricking his almost blind father Isaac into thinking he was Esau and receiving his father's blessing and inheritance, the older son. Yeah? Now, years later, Jacob is returning to his home country, laden with gifts for Esau, preparing to meet him and gain his acceptance, bargaining on the possibility that the gifts he's bringing of a huge number of livestock and sending before him to Esau would win his brother's favor. And it is on this journey, which he makes with a fearful heart, that Jacob finds himself wrestling with the strange night visitor. Jacob's deceptiveness does not work for him this time. He cannot fool and he cannot escape this angelic visitor and must face him. And in this wrestling with his presence, he's forced to confront the truth about himself. And the truth isn't pleasant. As a matter of fact, it turns out to be dangerous. It leaves Jacob wounded. But good comes out of the struggle. Jacob receives a blessing, this time not a stolen one, and he gets a new name. In ancient times, receiving a new name was an indication of a profound transformation that was taking place. Jacob was no longer to be called Jacob, which meant he supplants, takes the inheritance, but would now be called Israel, which means he strives with God. Have you ever struggled with an angel? Anybody have? Don't say, you don't have to talk out loud today, but is there something that makes you think that you struggled with an angel? Have you had a sense that you're receiving a message which you'd rather not hear, but which you had better heed? Where a truth is deeper than your present understanding of something, and it's determined to get your attention. It's not going to let go. It's important to recognize in situations where an angelic presence is picking a fight with you, that this wrestling match might be something of a blessing, a way to discover your greater task, your bigger purpose in life, a way to discover your own name. Renita J. Weems, professor of Old Testament studies at Vanderbilt University School, once wrote, "Faith is what you do between the last time you experienced God and the next time you experience God." So we're not taking away this experience of God and saying you just have to have faith. But faith is what you hold on to between things that let you know for certain that it's true. Our unexpected experiences of the divine aren't always pleasant or comfortable. The strange night visitors who grab our soul's attention do not present themselves as trustworthy, sage-like proclaimers of clear wisdom and compassion. They might instead come as disturbing dreams or disquieting thoughts that nag and won't go away. In this case, it's the haunting awareness of the excruciating and widespread suffering and need that much of humanity lives in on a daily basis, in contrast to the abundance, lavishness, and wastefulness of a few. When the exaggerated inequality of opportunity, of respect, of joy or comfort or leisure or self-respect between human lives of wealth and human lives of poverty gnaws at us. My father had great respect for the stories of Scripture. He was the adult Sunday school teacher at our church, spiritually curious, but also scientifically trained both in biology and medicine. So as a child, when I asked him what the story of the feeding of the 5,000 was about, he replied simply, "Oh, about the miracle of sharing." It doesn't have to be a supernatural event to be impressive. That many people would not have set out to travel any distance without taking some provisions with them. When Jesus held up the fish and loaves, they became powerful symbols of plenty, a plenty that was made possible through human cooperation and compassion. So the crowd opened their bags of provisions, meager as each one was, and together they created a feast. As the scripture says, all ate and were filled. Now, I'm not advocating that. There's no reason you can't believe that suddenly food appeared. That's good, that's fine. What we need to concentrate on is the message here. Frances Moore Lapp writes persuasively about the myth of scarcity in her book, Diet for a Small Planet. She acknowledges that hunger stunts the lives of hundreds of millions of people in this world, but asserts boldly that with changes in economic structures, not just charity, guys, it's wonderful to give, but changes in economic structures, in agricultural practices, and in eating habits of all that we eat, things can change. I obviously cannot present the arguments for her perspective in this sermon, but the basic premise is a compelling one. In her second book, Hope's Edge, she describes a trip to a city in Brazil whose government had boldly declared that food was a right of citizenship. Soon this government saw amazing results in the elimination of hunger. Many innovative approaches, both in gardening and production and in market changes, were implemented. When Moore Lapp asked the woman whose government job had coordinated these efforts if she had any idea when she began how much difference it would make, the woman's eyes filled with tears. And she answered, "I knew we were out of step. We had so much hunger in our world, but what was so upsetting, what I didn't know when I started this, is it's so easy to end it." Moore Lapp believes that the answer to world hunger lies in creating new mental maps, in ordinary people trusting their deepest values as well as their common sense and pushing us beyond our narrow consumerism. God, can we believe anything anymore? Can we even listen to that and go, yeah? Because the system is so out of control and you don't see the best in people and you say, well, is that even a possibility? No, not for us, but for who? God, right? For God through us. Trusting our deepest values and our common sense, like Jacob, we must wrestle with the stranger who visits in the night, the unconscious motives that drive us and limit us, self-indulgence and egocentricity and fear and narrow thinking, all of which I have in abundance, by the way. We must wrestle them down to receive our new name, to stand tall in our humanness, in the divine light in which we were created. 2 fishes and 5 loaves fed the throng around Jesus. And if we can believe this, we too might discover that in our striving with God, we will receive our divine blessing. And we might be on our way to creating a world in which all will eat and all will be fed. So today, as you've heard a few times, amid hunger pangs. Today is One Great Hour of Sharing Sunday. One Great Hour of Sharing has been helping Christians bring God's hope and healing to hurting people both in the U.S. and around the world for over 75 years. It's a mission made up of Church World Service and 9 denominations, including the United Church of Christ. This year, as every year, the One Great Hour of Sharing will gather money and will make a love offering for the world around us, healing and feeding and resettlement for refugees and bringing aid and relief to war-torn countries and places devastated by natural disaster. And we here in this congregation are a part of this mission. It's our mission too, to create a world in which we can all share in its bounty and its blessing and its blessedness.